Hello, this is Jan Banker, your chaplain, and welcome to Blackburn Chapel for worship. Since we can't be together yet, but hopefully soon, and can't take our offering, I invite you to bring your offering for our two charities, Melrose Elementary School and Park, over to the Rotunda in Bahama Place from 2 to 4 on Wednesdays. And I'm here with Sybil Hull, who has become our official accompanist, and I'm delighted that she's willing to do that for us, and I know you enjoy her music as well. And behind the scenes is her husband, Bill Hull, who is videotaping this right now. Sybil is going to play It Is Well With My Soul by Philip Bliss, arranged by John Purifoy. Our reading tonight is from 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 7b through 10. Therefore, to keep me from being too elated, a thorn was given me in the flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me, to keep me from being too elated. 3 times I appealed to the Lord about this, that it would leave me. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for power is made perfect in weakness. So I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may dwell in me. Therefore I am content with weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamities for the sake of Christ. For whenever I am weak, then I am strong. These are the writings of our sacred Christian faith. Thanks be to God. Now Sybil will play 2 verses of the hymn, Sing Praise to God Who Reigns Above, and you'll see the lyrics so you can sing along. I was drawn to this passage about a thorn in the flesh, since it's a visceral image for a lot of what's going on in our lives right now. I know you residents are in the throes of getting your hurricane evacuation plans figured out, which is quite disconcerting considering that this COVID-19 is still lurking all around. You'd think that Mother Nature would just call off the hurricane season under the circumstances, right? If this single strand of RNA virus could think, I bet I'd be quite excited by the prospect of hundreds of people packed together in churches and shelters and homes as they waited out a storm of a different kind. And then the Tampa Bay Times just had to amp up the worry by featuring a lead local article Sunday on tornadoes, which have already killed 76 people so far in 2020. Tornadoes are a frequent and deadly phenomenon, so scientists worry that the public has a misconception about the risk. The article made it crystal clear that the Deep South and Florida, which has as many tornadoes as any other state in this country, are actually more prone to twisters than Tornado Alley. It's easy to forget that the Earth is a dynamic planet with giant mercurial bodies of water and a thick atmosphere strewn with clouds propelled by playful, mischievous winds that seem at the helm of their own destiny. We may remember the Ebola outbreak in West Africa a few years ago, with 11 confirmed cases also in the U.S. Here in swampy, rainy Florida, we pay more attention to viruses transmitted by mosquitoes, such as West Nile and Zika. We dutifully take our flu shots every fall and cough into the crook of our elbows when we get a tickle in our throat, so we can be lulled into amnesia that for nearly 4 billion years the planet we inhabit has been teeming with microbes, some particularly mobile and nefarious by design. Now we have 3 things that we are informed about that can no longer surprise us: hurricanes, tornadoes, and pandemics. Paul writes in 2 Corinthians, "To keep me from being too elated, a thorn was given me in the flesh." Paul was under attack at the church he founded in Corinth by these so-called super apostles who came after him. They boasted that they were better speakers and tooted their own horns, that they had these supernatural visions, all of which exposed Paul as unimpressive and less credible. Rather than engage in this one-man upmanship in this brewing competition, Paul takes a different track. A thorn was given me in the flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me, to keep me from being too elated. And 3 times I appealed to the Lord about this, that it would leave me. One scholar notes that in certain texts the term thorn refers to sharpened wooden stakes which can be used to impale an enemy as a means of torture. In a sense, the novel coronavirus is a mortal enemy at the moment for everyone in the world. The virus has already tortured, if you will, thousands who got sick or died, along with the at-risk, overworked medical staff at the hospitals where the infected were treated. And now millions, in a sense, are impaled with catastrophic unemployment due to business closures and the cataclysmic disruption of big industries in the global economy. A thorn was given me in the flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me, to keep me from being too elated. It may seem like we could discern a message from this pandemic and its terrible spillover effects while also holding on to God's sufficient grace, made perfect in weakness. From Laura Spinney's book, Pale Rider, The Spanish Flu of 1918 and How It Changed the World, I learned that in the Middle Ages, people put the responsibility of disease back onto the gods or God. And for centuries, a sense of fatalism persisted despite the rise of science. But as germ theory became more accepted, people were forced to consider that some control over epidemics were literally in their own hands. The germ theory of disease had its beginnings in the mid-1800s, and by the early 20th century, the excitement had not yet abated, and there was a temptation to find bacteria responsible for every malaise. The Russian scientist Ilya Mechnikov, who received the Nobel Prize in 1908 for his work in immunology, even blamed bacteria for old age, which brought him some ridicule. He became obsessed with villages in Bulgaria where people reputedly lived to be over 100, attributing their longevity to the sour milk they drank, and in particular to the good bacteria that soured it. So when he hit middle age, Mechnikov drank large quantities of the sour milk, but alas, he died in 1918 at the youngish age of 71. Meanwhile, viruses were still a mystery. In Latin, the word virus means something like poison or potent sap. Scientists were still trying to figure out if they were toxins or organisms, liquid or particle, dead or alive. And here we are, with a viral thorn let loose upon the world and pressing its sharp spikes into the lungs and other critical organs of millions of people around the entire world, causing deaths and thousands. A thorn, a torture implement, was given me in the flesh to keep me from being too elated. What condition comes to mind that you'd equate with a slow form of torture? For me, one significant thorn in our flesh as a nation is our history of slavery, Jim Crow, resistance to civil rights, chronic racism, and how all these together impact Black Americans very negatively for over centuries. They are much more likely to be shot by police and shot by neighbors for nothing more than being Black while jogging. They are much more likely to be incarcerated than whites, even for the same crime. We can't listen to the COVID stats without being well aware that Blacks are much more likely to catch the virus and to die from it. Blacks are much more likely to live in areas with very high air pollution, and they have less access to affordable and trustworthy medical care, and and are overburdened with diseases triggered by stress. This is all because of the deep and persistent thorn of racism in our country. Have you ever had a condition you'd equate with torture? Some condition that derails you daily, threatens to make you self-absorbed, cranky, and prone to self-pity or desperation? Some illnesses may feel like torture if pain cannot be relieved. How's this for a starter list? Chronic back pain, debilitating migraines or vertigo, rheumatoid arthritis, neurodegenerative diseases, and addiction. When dopamine receptors are so easily ignited, that must at times feel like a torture of sorts. Paul says, 3 times I appealed to the Lord that this thorn in my flesh would leave me. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for power is made perfect in weakness. The word for perfect in this verse, a scholar notes, is perhaps better translated as reaches full maturity. God's power reaches full maturity in the weakness and vulnerability we withstand as mortals, living on a dynamic microbial planet, twirling through a milky galaxy. So I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, Paul announces, so that the power of Christ may dwell in me. Therefore I'm content with weaknesses, hardships, and calamities for the sake of Christ. For whenever I am weak, then I am strong. Violent weather systems, a lethal bacteria, a contagious novel coronavirus for which there is no medicine or vaccine are all thorns in our mortal bodies. And we ask God over and over to take them away. The full range of vulnerability associated with being mortal and inhabiting planet Earth gives our lives a priceless quality and helps us receive our lives from God as sheer gift. God's strength comes into its own in your weakness and vulnerabilities. Calamities can make us stronger as we more fully rely on Christ, dwelling in us and among us. Together, let's claim the promise. God's grace is enough. It's truly just what we need for these times. Please pray with me. Gracious Savior, our way and truth, whose grace is always sufficient. We are so concerned that this pandemic has been torturous to those who have been hospitalized, unable to have visitors, and to families whose loved ones died from COVID. We lift up prayers for them and for Black Americans and all others who have been impaled by the disease itself or its spillover of job loss, business collapse, and economic disaster. May they know your mercies and find resilience. We are concerned, O Lord, about divisive politics, competing interests, lies tossed in the public as truth, and the continuing vulnerability of the poor, minorities, and seniors. Bloom in us all the fruits of the Spirit, especially gentleness and kindness, generosity and self-control. May this calamity make us stronger as we more fully rely on you, dwelling in us and among us. Renew us day by day to faithfully follow you, sharing love, hope, and joy. In Jesus' name, amen. Now Sybil will play the benediction, Go Down in Peace, with the lyrics to make it easy for you to sing along. promise that God's grace is enough as you faithfully follow Christ, sharing love, hope, and joy. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and those you love and give you peace. And all God's people said,